Welcome back everyone. Guess what? I got my hands on the Pixel 4a. Actually, Google sent it to me. Now I will say, huge caveat. I'm going to be completely honest with my opinions. They didn't pay me. I wish they did. Then maybe I would have changed my opinion. Totally joking, but I think the 4a is a tremendous phone for the most part. But we're going to go ahead and compare it to last year's, technically not even last year. It hasn't even been a year yet. It feels like it's been 5 years, but the Pixel 4 came out, a couple months ago, a little bit less than a year. So let's go ahead and compare both of these and see which one you should pick up for the money. Now, honestly, if you have all the money in the world, you might just assume that the Pixel 4 may be the better option, but it is the better option in some cases, but in others, not so much. And we'll get into all those little details in a second. But pricing wise, the Pixel 4a is costing $350 brand new out of the box. You can go pick it up from when it officially comes out, I think August 20th. And that is a very, very good price to pay for something like this for a brand new phone. That's pretty hard to beat. Where something like the Google Pixel 4 last year was retailing for, I think, $799, $899, whatever it was. It doesn't matter. Right now, you can pick these things up for way less than $600. And I'll leave some of my favorite ones from Amazon linked down in the description below, so you can pick them up from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, looking on the front of both these phones, this is such an interesting dynamic because when you look at them, you might just assume that the Pixel 4a is the more expensive phone of the two, but it technically isn't, even though it kind of is. It's really hard to explain. So the Pixel 4 has a 5.7-inch P OLED display. This thing is 1080p, and it's not a bad panel. It wasn't a bad panel when I played with it, and when I still have it, it's not a bad panel at all. You do have, very little bezel around the display until you get to the top. It does have that kind of standard, notch up top. It's not really a notch though, it's just kind of like a standard bezel, and surprisingly it doesn't make the phone feel or look really weird. It kind of looks kind of decent in my opinion. I think this looks far better than the ugly notch they had on the Pixel 3 XL, but it is what it is. And the panel is good. You do have that 90Hz refresh rate, which is a really cool feature. But when we switch over to something like the Pixel 4a, you actually have a little bit of a bigger display on it, and it kind of looks nicer. You have, a little bit less bezel, and you have a hole punch display on that panel as well. Now, it is a 5.81-inch panel, and it's an OLED display. It's 1080p, and it's a little bit bigger, like I said, than the Google Pixel 4's panel, but still a pretty decent panel for sure. Now, you don't have that 90Hz refresh rate like you do on the Pixel 4, but nonetheless, it's still a really, really good panel in my opinion. And here's the thing you have to keep in mind. The Pixel 4a is costing $350. When the Pixel 4 came out, it was kind of selling for that, flagship price. And that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. If it was between these two, price-wise, the Pixel 4a by far is a better value per dollar. Even though the Pixel 4 has that 90Hz refresh rate, you're getting a bigger panel. In my opinion, you might be getting even a nicer looking panel because of that hole punch display. Even if the panel itself isn't greatly better or whatever, just the facade that it doesn't have that huge bezel on it kind of makes it look a little bit better. I know it sounds weird, but it is what it is. Now you have USB Type-C on both these phones. Up top you have the headphone jack on the Pixel 4a, where the Google Pixel 4 we don't have a headphone jack, so just remember that. And on the back, a little bit of different setup on both. With the Pixel 4a we have a single camera setup, but it's pretty much built out of plastic. It doesn't really feel that premium, and that's one of the biggest disadvantages for the Pixel 4a. However, on the Google Pixel 4, you have this kind of matte, plasticky kind of texture feeling on the back. It doesn't feel cheap, and it definitely doesn't feel extremely premium, but it doesn't feel bad. It's definitely closer to the more premium feeling side of things than not, and it definitely feels more premium than the Pixel 4a. And a big thing to keep in mind, the Pixel 4 does have that dual camera setup, where the Pixel 4a only has that single camera setup, so again, a big thing to keep in mind. And in terms of the outside, that really pretty much covers it up. Another couple things that I want to hit on, the Pixel 4 does have IP certification. You have IP68 dust and water resistance, so you can go up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes. Where the Pixel 4a does not have any certification like that, so kind of keep that in mind. That's a pretty big thing to keep in mind, but I think that officially covers up pretty much everything I wanted to hit up on the outside. Now, talking about the internals, more specifically the software, they both started off on Android 10, so theoretically they're going to last for pretty much the same amount of time. We saw this with the Pixel 3a device as well, the 3a and the 3a XL. Most probably the 3a, 3a XL are going to last as long as the Pixel 3 and 3 XL, so we can say that same exact thing for the Pixel 4 and the 4a. The Pixel 4 is getting Android 10, 11, 12 whenever it ends. Most probably the Pixel 4a is is also going to be getting Android 10, 11, 12. As long as the Pixel 4 is supported, the Pixel 4a is most probably going to be supported as well. And again, it's another big thing to keep in mind. I think things like this, the software, are some of the most important things. And we just saw yesterday the Galaxy Note 20 Unpacked event that Samsung did. They said they're going to start supporting their devices for an extra year's support. And I was saying that for a long time because software is so important, and now they actually said it, and I think that's a really cool thing that they did. So in terms of software, that pretty much covers it up. Now in terms of performance, I'll go and tell you the specs and I'll tell you some real world use. The Pixel 4 has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 640 GPU, and two different models, a 64GB model and a 28GB model. I don't even know why they made that 64GB model, but both those models have 6GB of RAM each. Where the Pixel 4a has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 730 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 618 GPU, and 6GB of RAM. There's only one model of it, the 128GB model. And for sure, what I will tell you is I definitely think that the Pixel 4 is probably the better performing device. I think the Pixel 4 was really pretty decent when I was messing with it. Anything I do with it is perfectly fine, and it's really hard for me to find things that are wrong with the performance side of things because my specific performance isn't really too complicated. I play some games, I mess with it a little bit. If it's good, it's good. I can usually tell pretty fast if a phone is not a good performing phone. This Pixel 4 is a pretty good performing phone overall. But the thing to keep in mind though is that the Pixel 4a is also a pretty good performing phone as well. Like for the amount you're paying for it and everything, it's actually not that bad, which I think is a humongous thing to keep in mind. For a phone like the Pixel 4a, you're spending $350 on it, but it feels like you're getting more than that. And this has a lot to do with the software. Because it is stock Android, it makes it that much better. And on top of that, the performance isn't even that bad. You have that 6GB of RAM in it that the Pixel 4 also has. These two things have the same amount of RAM, which is really, really impressive. And the fact that you can save so much money and get a brand new phone like the Pixel 4a and maintain that RAM is pretty impressive, to say nonetheless. I don't even know what I was saying there, but so definitely for sure, I think the Pixel 4 is a better performing phone, but the Pixel 4a is still pretty decent for sure. Now let's go and hit on the cameras. The Google Pixel 4, like I said, has a dual camera setup, a 12.2 megapixel wide angle lens, and then a 16 megapixel telephoto lens. I don't know why they didn't add an ultra wide sensor, but it is what it is. Where the Pixel 4a has a single wide angle lens, the 12.2 megapixel sensor. Both can do 4K at 30, which is really cool. But it's only cool for the 4a. The Pixel 4 could have easily handled 4K at 30, could have easily handled 4K at 60. I don't know why they didn't. It's just another one of those things that Google just did weird. But like I've always been saying, it is what it is. We can't go back and change it. So I'm just praying that the Pixel 5 does have 4K at 60. Maybe it'll have 8K, who knows? Probably not, but I guess we'll see what happens. So definitely between these two, the Pixel 4 will have the better camera, but the 4a, it's still pretty good. 8 megapixel sensors on the front, 1080p on both of them as well at 30 frames, which also is kind of weird because there's a lot of phones out there that can do 4K at 30 on that front camera. So the Pixel 4 could have easily done it. The 4a, understandable, it's cheaper, it's okay, but the 4 could have done it. So that's a pretty big thing for the 4a, I think is an advantage for, where the 4 is a little bit different. Now let's go ahead and end off with the battery life. The Google Pixel 4 had a 2800 mAh battery, where the Pixel 4a has a 3140 mAh battery. And in terms of the battery life, I will definitely give the edge to the Google Pixel 4a, but there is one important thing to keep in mind. The Pixel 4 actually has wireless charging, so that's a pretty big thing to keep in mind. I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, the Pixel 4, like wireless charging is everything, but it's a pretty important thing to have, to say nonetheless. I mean, like, every phone has wireless charging, and the fact that this phone doesn't have it is kind of weird. So the Pixel 4a doesn't have it. I understand it's a $350 phone, but there's phones that cost like $50 that I'm sure I can get in the used market that'll have this type of feature. So I don't know, it was kind of weird, but again, it is what it is. There's nothing we can really do about it. Now to kind of sum up the video and to answer the question, and there's a couple of different ways to answer because there's different scenarios. So first of all, if you have a Google Pixel 4, should you get the 4a? Obviously not. There's really no advantage to. If you currently have another phone, let's say you have like a super old Nexus or the original Pixel or something, or an LG G2, getting the Pixel 4 might be a better way to go. It just kind of encompasses a ton of different things. The only bad side of it maybe would be the battery life, but if you can find one for a pretty decent price, I would probably recommend picking up a Pixel 4. I think it is a better phone, but the Pixel 4a is right there too, and it's, such a cheap price for a brand new phone. And I have to give credit to Google for making a priced phone like this that's so cheap and really good. I mean, for 99% of the things that the Pixel 4 can do, the 4a can do. It just doesn't have wireless charging and doesn't have the 90 hertz, but for everything else, the Pixel 4a does it pretty decently. If the Pixel 4 was a 10 out of 10, the 4a would probably be like a 9 out of 10, I would think. It's really up there in my opinion. So the choice is yours, but if you're trying to save the most amount of money, getting the 4A is probably the better way to go. But if you have some more money to spend, getting a Pixel 4 might be the better option. So that really pretty much covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.